And we are live for episode 35 of Agencyphonics. Good morning. A very special guest today is Mr. Andrew Dobbie from the incredible MadeBrave, the founder of MadeBrave. Where are you in the world right now?
I'm in Eaglesham, which is just outside Glasgow in Scotland.
All right, okay. So just before we get started, Andrew, which I'm really looking forward to, like this podcast episode has been in the waiting quite a long time for me, because I think I've heard your story about 20 times, but I still love it, hearing it every single time. It's like the first time you tell it. So I want to share that with all of our listeners. Just a couple of quick thank yous, as always. Thanks to Forecast, who kindly sponsor our not-for-profit social enterprise agency, Nomics and Agencyphonics. All of this is done for free. It's our way of paying it forward to the sort of now, next, and future of agencies around the UK. We kind of work a lot with the grassroots agency side of things, but it's it can't really happen without people like Forecast supporting us. Also, Wirehive, Caitlin, our producer today, she's actually in the Wirehive office. I think she's the only person there in the studio, which we're streaming live today onto YouTube. So please, if you can, subscribe. I think we just broke 400 subscribers. We're a year in, but we've got to get to 1,000 to earn any money. So we've got a long way to go yet, but really appreciate if anyone could just hit subscribe and help us towards our cause. And that's about it, I think. Yeah, I think I said all my thank yous. We're feeling a little bit more like Christmas every day now. I've got my Christmas tree up next to me here, and I have the fire burning. I actually did a talk last Tuesday to 100 agency owners. I think, Andrew, you might have been. Were you listening?
Yes, I was.
You hear the fire explode at one point, and everyone was sort of thinking that my carpet was going to go up in flames. But anyway, still alive to tell the story. So Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
So tell us, share with us, especially for those of our listeners who haven't heard your story before, share the story of how MadeBrave came about.
All right. So I suppose I was a designer and a photographer for 8 years. I worked in a very kind of sort of small agency, sort of no more than sort of 8 or 10 people. I suppose back in, I'm trying to think now, 2011, when my little boy Finlay, he was about 2 weeks old, I suppose I didn't have much to my name, and it probably wasn't the best time to kind of start a business or kind of go off and start to work for yourself. But I suppose at the time I was I suppose it was a money-driven thing that my wife was going to be not working because of said child, and so I left my job at the time to head off to be a freelancer. And I never really had ambition to be anything more than a freelancer. I really just set out to kind of, as I say, it was money-driven, so I set out to kind of try and earn a little bit more for nappies and childcare and such like. But I suppose from there, MadeBrave was born. In that kind of first year from freelancer to kind of creating a business, I think I went from myself to about 6 full employees in that first year, and then the second year we went from like 6 to 16, and then we're now up at kind of 45 people there or thereabouts. So that's that. I mean, that's the crux of it. Really.
Yeah. And so that is it's a fantastic story, and I'm curious to know is when you first started, you obviously were a freelancer. And you said you didn't really have at that stage ambitions to grow. What changed that? What was the sort of pivotal moment that made you think I'm going to go from freelancer to founder effectively?
Yeah. So I suppose, like, first of all, as I said, I did just think, I kind of thought, if I went to being a freelancer, I could earn a couple of £100 a day. I thought that was kind of my first goal, if you like. But very quickly, I actually realised that I loved the business part of it. So when I worked in the previous agency, I was a designer, I was a photographer, I was doing the creative stuff, and and I think when I got out and very early on, I just realised, oh wow, I love the business side of it. I really got the kind of buzz for that, and really enjoyed that. And I think in that kind of first maybe 6 months, I didn't know if this would take off. So I was doing baby photography, because I obviously had my son, and I thought, well, I'm going to be around lots of new parents, and I'm a photographer, so I did that kind of stuff. At the same time, I was doing wedding photography, so I think in my the first year of MadeBrave, I think I also did about 12 weddings, and I was doing the agency stuff, and I suppose I was doing all three and trying to figure out what would work, and very quickly I realised with the baby photography, babies don't work to your diary; they work to their own diary. So you couldn't do a huge amount of photography in one day. So I was never going to kind of sort of reach, I suppose, maybe the monetary goals I had at that time. The wedding photography, it's pretty hard work, and I suppose the agency stuff. Very quickly, I got very busy, and so I kind of stopped doing the other two, and kind of put all my effort and everything onto the kind of MadeBrave side of things. And I suppose I kind of ran it as a freelancer for a few months, and then I just saw how busy we were getting, and I thought, I suppose I really need to do what I'm doing for other people, and turn this into a brand, turn this into a business.
And I think that's what I love about that story is it really resonates with me a little bit as well, because I had three things in my first year as well. I was also doing, you probably had more glamorous. I was earning £100 a day doing cleaning jobs to try and support my first year with an internet agency or a web development agency. And actually I did three things. I used to fix people's computers. I would also, I did a little bit of this thing called field marketing, which was basically sort of helping put people to demonstrate products into like retail stores. And actually it was the internet thing that took off. So there's a little bit of hedging in those early days. But I love the fact that you found other revenue streams, I guess, to keep you going, because that's quite important, right? Before you start winning any clients. And obviously you must have won something reasonably big then, did you, to then suddenly have a team of 6 people, or was it?
I'm trying to think back. I think
you kind of
I think I was kind of, I think that way when you had to, when you suddenly go in from having a secure salary to not having that, I thought I'll do anything to make sure there's money, coming into the house, kind of thing. And so I suppose I was kind of out and about, and I did lots and lots of networking. I thought, I'm going to find work, and then very quickly, I was so stressed, if I'm being really honest, in that first few months, because I'd gone out and I'd drummed up so much business that I had so much to do, and so very quickly, I think I had someone supporting me freelance. Then I was like, do you want to work 2 days a week guaranteed? Then very quickly they were full time, and then I think. I was sharing an office at the time with someone, and this guy that I was working with was really 10 times better designer than me. Was a little bit fed up with the kind of business side of it, of kind of chasing invoices, and was kind of going to leave the creative industry to go and do something else. And I was kind of like, do you want to work for me? And he was like, well, I've got a family, all that kind of stuff. I need roughly £30,000, and I was kind of, shit, I don't have £30,000. But one thing that was kind of changing for me was that at the time someone said to me, Andrew, you don't need £30,000, to hire someone. And I think, I talk to a lot of people now starting businesses, and they're like, how do I get my first hire, and how do I do that? And it was a really nice kind of bit of advice that someone gave me, is that they said, well, a £30,000 salary costs you about £2,500 a month. And, if you sit down and you have that conversation with that first hire, or, there's a probationary period, there's 3 months for you to try and figure this out. And, it's there for both parties to make sure that the relationship works, and that it's going to work. And so we sat down, and I said, I'll try my best to do this. I want to employ you. It's a lot of money. But the way I looked at it was that, well, I suddenly only needed £2,500, or that ultimately the risk was £7,500 for that 3-month contract. And, I think once right, okay, I've got £2,500 to find, you then go off and find that and make more. And, I think, in that first year, I just did that over and over and over. So, by the time I had number one, a second person, and I just kind of kept doing that,
Yeah. I think it's great advice, and you're right. It is a kind of a. I think it'd be good to. I mean, you probably have got quite a few pearls of wisdom, because I think that you can share around to freelancers looking to make, if they wanted to make that change. Did you ever regret in those early days making that change from going from freelance to having people working for you, or was it instantly? Because sometimes when you scale, it's tougher, isn't it? In some ways,
Yeah, I think, I wrote a post on LinkedIn the other day about this, that there's this kind of pressure for everyone to scale and grow a business. And I don't think it's for everyone. I think, I always say to people when they're asking for my advice in this is that, you've got to kind of try and decide what your vision is and what you're trying to create. And neither way is right or wrong. It's not right what I've done now. It's not right if you choose to be a freelancer. I think you've got to try and decide what makes you happy and what's the right balance for you, your family, and your life. And running and growing an agency is not a stress-free endeavor. There's a lot of stress, a lot of effort goes in. But likewise, being a sole freelancer has stresses, and so I suppose it's trying to find and figure out that balance. I mean, the way I looked at it, and again, it's just my own opinion, is that if I was to stay as a freelancer, I would own a job, and I would always be having to do. I'd have to put the hours in all the time to receive income and to kind of keep a living. And I suppose when I had when Finlay was born, I'd started to realise the value of being able to spend time with your family and being able to, I suppose, have a little bit more choice around that. So I decided to grow the business because I decided I wanted to almost build something that was a bit more self-sustaining than just me owning a job, because then I felt like if I got ill or I couldn't work, then suddenly you can't provide, so I suppose that sent me off on the route to kind of start building a business.
And it is a fluid thing, right? Because I remember, the first step for me was I'm working for myself, I'm in control of my own destiny, and then the second thing was, I think it'd be nice to have like a small team of 8 people, so I wasn't having to do all of the web development. Because I remember, you're right, it's not always, there are stresses being freelance, because I was like networking and working on the business in the daytime and then building websites in the evening. And so I was like, I think at one point I was working 20-hour days going, this isn't anyway a lifestyle or a business. This is actually worse, and actually taking somebody on actually halved the amount of time I was working initially. But I think it's but I think I had 8 in my head, and I thought, oh, that'll be it. And then when it got to 8, I suddenly had 20 in my head, and I got to 20, I was like, do you know what, I want to be the largest in sort of the county that I was in, then the south of England, then it was like I want to be number 1 in the UK. And weirdly, I don't know where that came from, but I think you're right about aligning your purpose, like aligning your vision and your purpose, what it is you're trying to achieve. And there is, I'm with you 100%, by the way, there is no right or wrong. I think I've met people in the last 10 years who have what they would call it purely lifestyle agencies that have made probably more money than some of the people that scaled their businesses up,
Exactly. So, you see some people that scale and scale and scale, and then they're earning way less than they were when they were much smaller. There's definitely no right answer on it, and it's hard as well. I always find it quite funny, is like same as you, and I think you talk to anyone that's growing a business or have grown, is that you think, I remember going, right, we'll get to kind of 10 people, and that's about right. I've heard that's about perfect. But then once you're in it, it doesn't stop. It's an organic thing, and it's very difficult to just say that's it. And especially when it's service based, because it's very peaky, So, you can find it very difficult to turn away business when you're busy, so it kind of tends to just go and go and go. And so, I've found that, we'll stop at 20 people. That'll be about the right size. But then you get there and you realize, oh, we're missing this or this or this. And it suddenly jumps to 30. And as you know, it continues. Yeah.
And so I think, and also the other, the thing you said about the kind of it only costs you 3,000. There was this tip that I got. In fact, it was something that my late mum shared with me. Whenever she said you want to work out what something is a week, you sort of like, you double it. So it was like, if it's 20,000, you double it's 40,000, take off the noughts, it's £400 a week. So I learned this little trick. So whenever I was trying to take on people, I would go, well, if it's 25 grand salary, that's only £500 a week. Now, if I can just sell one designer for 1 day a week, that pays for the designer, or 1 day of web development. And I had another little way of kind of working it out. As long as I could bring someone on and break even, that was my original plan. I think after that, we sort of, I tend to advise people to know you've sold 6,000 of a service before recruiting someone, so you can obviously cover their costs and everything else. But what's interesting watching you and hearing your story, though, is that because you're creative, and actually what I find typically is with creatives is that often, and the same with engineers as well, is, and this is a bit of a stereotypical kind of overview here. I mean, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but they often, you do tend to use a lot more freelancers, like in those early days, rather than recruit. But you actually recruited quite early, didn't you? Which I think is, do you think...
Do you know what's funny about that? I hadn't ever really thought about it, but I tell you what, the agency that I came from was a small agency. It was about 8 people, and we had never really used many freelancers, right? So I didn't really know how to engage with freelancers or what that was. So I think my automatic was just to go to, I now need someone in the team. And I think very early on as well was I thought, well, it's less in my control. I wouldn't know how to manage that. And I suppose in those early days, you want to kind of control everything because you're very precious about what you're creating. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it is smart when you do recruit. I know that today you don't have to recruit people to come to an office. You can, everyone can work remotely, et cetera, et cetera. But I think sometimes when you commit to people, I still feel that you can really lock down the culture. Yeah. You can certainly get more commitment back. And I'm not saying you can't scale a business through freelancers. Of course you can. But I think if you have a core team, it certainly helps. And so I think it's quite brave of you, really, I think, to have recruited people. But if you only ever knew that way, then...
I was probably quite naive at the time as well, though, in terms of, like, when you look back now, I mean, now, everything, you've got kind of ratios for everything and how you hire and how, and I think back then there's a bit of that entrepreneurial gut and kind of just... I think you need a little bit of the naivety, because if you quite knew what you were getting yourself into, you maybe wouldn't
never make any decisions.
No, exactly.
What you definitely got right, I think, and anyone who's seen you and knows you, is that I think when I first spoke to you and I first came up to your offices in Glasgow, I'd just come back from America, and I'd come from an agency where the brand experience, that the brand was so well created, curated in this agency in North America, in United States, and it was pervasive through the whole business. Mm-hmm. And I came into your, and you were one of the first agencies I went in where I really felt you lived and breathed your brand. The brand experience was pervasive, like everything you touch, from, the childhood toys that you had in the office, that obviously match, your demographic customer, because I don't know, like anyone who's between 25 and 45 could probably find a toy from their childhoods, and it conjured back memories. But more than that, you defined your values. You not only did you get the personal brand and brand experience right, which I make that 2 points, because a lot of people do the branding, but then they don't really live and breathe it. But the second thing is that you also got your personal brand right too. You had the story that you would tell about why you set the business up around that. Remember the cup of coffee? I remember the cup of coffee. And I love that whole story about why, you started moving into brand, but you live and breathe it, Andrew. Like you lead by example, but you get both right. Your company has got an incredible brand that lives and breathes, but so do you as an individual. Mm-hmm. You've actually done, and I think if you look at the most successful agencies in the last few years, and I think, a lot of people probably saw that post from Carrier, right? I can't remember the name of Rise Up 7, and they've grown from 0 to 3.5 million in like about 2 or 3 years. But again, the key thing there is she's a very, very strong personal brand. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's been really great to watch you use both of those individually and as a company. Yeah. And I think through and that must have really, through when the sort of lockdowns first started happening through COVID, your LinkedIn presence just seemed to elevate very quickly. You can tell
Yeah,
us.
I think LinkedIn have turned on some sort of uh, some sort of algorithm, organic juice for everyone at the moment. It reminds me very much of kind of how Facebook was back when I started the business, and I suppose some of that kind of personal brand stuff. I don't know. It's kind of almost like by accident, if you like, and initially is that when we started growing the business, Facebook, back in 2011, people didn't quite know how to use it yet, and very much, I think what we did that maybe differed from other agencies is at the time was that because I was a photographer and had camera in my hands and I had that skill set, as I was growing the business, we were just literally having fun. And, and a way that a lot of MadeBrave looks and, the stuff that we do at MadeBrave is because I say to our team, look, you're there more than we are at home. Not anymore right now, for now at home more, but, let's make sure we enjoy it and let's have a good time while we're growing a business. And so we were always doing that stuff, but we were documenting it. And at the time we were putting it on Facebook. And it was literally no more thought to it than let's just document this journey and put it out. And now we all know that documenting journeys on social media is kind of the best way to use it. If you put your work up on social media, you're the same as 22,000 other agencies in the UK. So, I suppose you're always trying to find, you don't want every customer in the world, and you're never going to get every customer. You want ones that get you, that understand your values, that understand your team, and likewise for recruiting new team members, you want people that get the MadeBrave, values, and because if they don't, they're not going to work. You're not going to enjoy it. So I suppose the way we've always used social media is to put out what we're about, and I perfectly know that that's going to attract people that will dislike it. But in a sense, it's kind of good because it's like, well, good. I now know that you're not for us, and the people that do like it are for us, and it means the customers that come to us for that stuff, we're going to get on. We're going to create great work. And as I say, team members as well. We're going to have a better relationship because they know what to expect when they get in.
Yeah. So can you talk us through a couple of examples of your values?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in kind of values-driven business. Kind of values are kind of like, I suppose they're kind of the beliefs that you have in the business, behaviors that you want to encourage, and so. For MadeBrave, the first couple of years, actually, we let the kind of culture grow organically to kind of see. We knew we had something, and we saw that it was attracting attention and engagement, but we didn't put it down on paper straight away. And I think there's something quite good in that just let it go a little bit. And then what we did was, as a team, we tried to figure out what is it that we've created here, what are the special things. And so I suppose some of the values we have are we've got amigos without egos. So Mexican food was just a thing that was always, we always got burritos on a Friday. It was just something we liked as a team. But then we kind of used that Mexican theming into the kind of amigos without egos. And that value is all built around that the best idea can come from anyone. And often actually it doesn't even come from us in the team. Often when your client sits in the room, it's in them already, the answer to their brief. It's just our job as creative people to pull it out of them. And I suppose that value is based around that idea of just let the best idea come from whoever. Don't let anyone have an ego and say it's got to come from them. We've then got another value called be your weird self. I think values are great because as a leader, you often have to, when you're doing all hands or you're looking after a group of people, you have to find ways to be able to talk about difficult subjects. And, the be your weird self one was built around the idea that, look, we're all weird and wonderful in our own way, right? We're all different. And that's what makes great teams is that you're different from me, I'm different from the person beside me. And the sooner we all understand that and understand the people around you are different, the more you can respect them. But we also used the Be Your Weird Self platform as a platform to talk about mental health. Mental health's often a very difficult thing to talk about anywhere, but especially the workplace. And, for years and years and years, we've all been told, leave your worries at home and, come into work and be professional. And I was kind of like, why don't we not do that? And why don't we realize that we're human beings and look after each other? And my thought being that, yourself, you lead a business, there's a big responsibility on your shoulders to look after the people in your team. And I suppose I kind of felt that, let's make these topics easier to talk about, and then, people should feel safe coming to work. And likewise, if I'm struggling, and I do, and people struggle, and, we all have pressures in our life, that I would hope that in return, if you need looked after or cared for, then your team will do that as well. So obviously we've got loads of, more values. You can find them all on the MadeBrave site. There's, we put a lot of effort into them, and we really put a lot of effort. And I think the most important part that, for anyone listening that they're creating values in their business is that, values only mean something when you put them into action. So, you can't just write these things, put them on a PDF or put them on a word on the wall. It's like, what we've really, really started to focus on as a culture at MadeBrave is how do we bring these things to life? How do we make sure and prove that we're living and breathing them? How do they affect policy or everything that we do in this world? And I think brands in general are starting to wake up to this, and it's quite nice to see, because the world now is very transparent and seeks transparency, because we're all connected in this ever connected social media. And I think the change that's coming is, as I mentioned, is that we can't just say we have this purpose or these values. We have to truly show it, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're currently rewriting Agencynomics at the moment, and I went back and visited some of the early chapters, and basically in there I remembering back to my early days, I found it very hard to define a lot in the early days of Blue Halo. Like I was more of a techie than a creative, so for me it was quite hard to maybe focus on my branding. And also I didn't really know where to focus. Like it was until I turned over about £1 million and I'd won like a Premiership football club. I didn't really know that sport was going to be my focus, and so the values as well. Like I love what you just said then, by the way, about the kind of organicness to it, because I think sometimes you do have to go on a bit of a journey, and it is business as normal, and that's the reality of it. Most entrepreneurs, when they set a business up, contrary to belief, don't have a plan. They are iterating on the fly all the time, trying to adapt and learn and hear where the demands and where the problems are that they can solve. And I think that the values for me, it's funny because I think our values almost weren't written down for probably quite a few years, but there was this. But there was something around the recruitment, which is, like they always say, when you do recruitment, you should always try and recruit around the values. You should always ask for people, so explain what, you probably do this in your ones. You say, if one of us be your weird self. So what's weird about you then? Like you want to hear those stories. And I guess when we were interviewing, we always had certain things that we looked for. But what I love about your values is that you've taken time to kind of make them fun and playful. In a way, the way you've written them, you haven't just written down, mastery, autonomy, cause, community, or whatever purpose. You've actually come up with something that is really creative and fun, right? And so something that everyone can believe in as well. So,
well, I think that's a big part of kind of how you get branding right, and not to say that I've got it, perfect. But what I mean is that, a lot of people do write down integrity or, professionalism. And I'm kind of like, surely that's a given, right? Surely we have to have integrity and be professional. Yeah. So that's kind of like a MadeBrave. Those things, I expect those to be there. We expect them as a team, that you're going to look after each other. You're going to be professional to your customers. You're going to have integrity. And I almost feel like the values are a layer on top of that. It's the thing that uniquely only you have, or your culture, your team have. And I think, when you do it well, is, there might be a foundation of those elements, those words, but try and find a layer where you add your own personality to it. So, great brands have really distinctive personalities. And I think that's one focused on at MadeBrave, was to try and, what does MadeBrave sound like? If MadeBrave is a person, if you can hear that voice and you visualize all the content, all the actions that we've taken, what does that feel like? And you see brands like Oatly, for example, hugely scaling quickly, very distinctive personality. You can see it in your mind's eye right now, without knowing everything they say, and they've taken their values, they're putting them into action, and they're making sure it permeates right through their business. So it's it's a topic I could literally talk for hours on. So,
and so you're with the other thing that just is my observation of you that you do really, really well is that you do. Like you've built this, I call it a fame strategy really, but in a way, everything that you offer as a service, you kind of don't just talk about it, you walk it, right? You actually, everything that your clients would want from you do yourself, So I loved, for example, and there's been quite a lot of examples, things I've seen you do over the years, but obviously, if I wanted to make my brand more famous, I would probably come to you because I can see when you do things, you don't do them by halves, and you come up with quite, you're from filling up your office with loads of toy balls to whatever, like Christmas, dressing up as a Christmas tree. I saw the other day. All of the things you're doing are. But I particularly liked, as you said, when you first started, maybe Facebook, not everyone really knew the power of the marketing there, but if we go back to just 7-8 months ago to March, TikTok was, I literally had just taken my account off because I went on it because I always like to be on what's next. But the average age on TikTok was about 14 years old 7 months ago. And I was like, this is just not my demographic. I'm out of here. And then, but you have then kind of taken that platform, with your son, created some amazing content that obviously really lifted up, and it did two things. One, it showed your creativity, but two, it showed actually how brands could use it effectively, and also let everybody knew that you could use the platform, right? And so that's been really great examples there. I mean, did that have a positive effect on you?
Well, I think maybe the lesson through all of that, and it's not specifically just a TikTok, but I think the thing that you've coined on there is that I always felt that how can I advise people how to grow a brand if I can't prove that I could do it myself? And, when you run a branding agency or you do projects with clients, you only do part of building the brand. So the one place I had control to grow a full brand was my own. And because I'm a creative person, I was a designer, etc. When I came off the tools, if you like, as a designer, I lost the bit where I get to create. And so I put that Brave, and that's what became my plaything, if you like, to get my creativity, and keep my heart singing, if you like. But it lets me try and test everything, so then I can say from real certainty what works and what doesn't. And so so that's the same with TikTok. I see a new platform appearing and I think, well, I better go and try it out and try and figure it out and try and understand how the thing works. But also, at the same time, literally was just doing that because of lockdown as well, and my son was with me all day, and I thought it'll be fun for both of us and it gives us memories to look back on. But you're right, it's like as soon, it's funny because, before I did any TikToks with Finn, I started and, we thought, let's do 1 or 2 a day. And we did it. And it was a little passion thing for us both. But very quickly, I got inbound inquiries. Oh, you're a TikTok expert. Can you come and run some webinars? Which forced me to go and learn more about TikTok, which forced my team to learn more about TikTok. And then next thing, we're talking more about TikTok and we're doing it with some of our biggest clients. So, I think, I made the point.
I think, when you're a tech business, they're really good at pivoting, right? They'll have this idea, and then normally at some point they realize that just because it's a great idea, the timing may not be right, or the market needs something else, and they'll pivot their product or their service. They do it really, really well. And agencies historically have normally been pretty bad. Like in 2008, most of the big agencies had completely missed anything to do with digital and just basically end up having to buy all the agencies up to be able to offer it in-house. Or they always used to call it the dark arts department in the big agencies. And I think the same thing still happens a little bit now in the larger agencies. Sometimes they get set in their ways a little bit with what they know. But when you're kind of like a challenger agency and you're up and coming, you're much more, I think what's happened certainly in the last 6-7 months, I've noticed a lot of agencies have been a lot more open to look at this now, next, and future of their services, and actually constantly having one eye on what's next. And you have to evolve your business these days, moving forward so much faster than any time in history, right? I mean, it's exponential growth on a business, on the way businesses operate, let alone because technology is at the heart of everything we do. So I think that it's great that you're doing that. And it's also great that you have a culture and a team who are willing to learn new things. But you don't have to always... So a lot of people say, oh, yeah, you're wrong to try and sell what you don't do. But actually, sometimes you've got to learn what the next thing is, because what you do now just can be done in-house, maybe in 10 years from now, or more automated. So I think it's great you're doing that. And I love that the team, also embraced it and learned that. And I think that's going to be the winning success for an agency in the future, is being able to constantly, through their own projects, like their own fame projects, but also through their using their customers' brands where they can, trying to use them as test beds almost. That experimentation, from planning to experimentation, and trying to actually keep moving forwards, testing new platforms. And as you say, it works because once you're actually showing and demonstrating people you can use TikTok, then people are going to talk to you, right?
And it's the same with like you mentioned earlier, we turned one of our offices into a ball pit. As soon as we did that, right, it's fun for us for that week until you have to clean these things up, right? It's great fun, but what it does is, following on from there, you get brands going, I saw that, could you do something similar to us? So it's like, I don't get. I get people are busy, but I think it's a really easy one to use your own brand to be able to kind of showcase what you're able to do. And it also attracts back what you want and what fulfills you and your team as well. So
I love that when you describe that, then, as the fact that that's because you've had to hang up the tools, because that's often quite a big challenge for anyone who's a coder. Or I mean, for me it was easy because I was a rubbish front-end web developer, so as soon as someone else came in better, and I'm not a great creative, so that was brilliant. But like me, I didn't want to lose still that creative thinking, the stuff that I got passionate about. Technology, you're passionate about, design, creativity, and brand. And I love the fact that you get to, as you say, use that in your role now to play and to experiment and to create these things. So
likewise, I've realized very much I was a mediocre designer. now that I see what great designers are that I have in my team, I was very much mediocre. But I think it's like that kind of freelancer agency owner question. It's not right for everyone to hang up the tools. It's right for some. So, I do see some creative agencies that are trying to grow and they're struggling. And it's often when the owner is holding on to, I have to be the designer, I have to creative direct, I have to run that. I suppose, again, it kind of, for me, it was just something someone said to me earlier on, was that, you kind of need, if you want grow this business and you want to create a business, then if you come off the tools, try and work towards an empty desk. And that one stuck with me, actually, that if and it sounds very egotistical, you've an empty desk and nothing to do, but I don't mean it like that. All I mean is that when you're leading the business, if you work towards the vision of having eventually an empty desk, that anything that lands on your desk, there should be someone better around that's much better at doing that task and is much more fulfilled at it than you. So you've got someone that, operationally, they like doing operation, they're going to take that bit financially or creatively, whatever part of the business. So, till you get to that point where you actually have the headspace to be able to look after, care for these people and figure out the direction that you have to take your agency to make sure that all the jobs that have been created are going to be there for the future. Yeah,
great. And so one of the other observations I have of you as well is that you always seem to have advisors around you. On your journey, you've always put good people around. You have, by the way, first of all, I just want to echo what you just said. I think you put a really good team around you. I know some of your team members, and I can see I always call it the Richard Branson thing, where you sort of find that the things you're not so good at, the roles and the skills and the attributes, and you put a really good team of very different people around you who are good, strong, like Stephen, operationally and sales and all that side of things. And I think that's really, really good. But you've always had advisors, and it's funny when I look at the most successful agencies, they often have really strong, good advisors around them. Why do you use advisors? Or why have you brought advisors on your journey? I think from almost early stage you've had people around.
the first 2 years I didn't, because you can't afford them when you first start, right? And I also didn't quite understand how it all worked when I was, first couple of years, you're learning everything. So but they were probably the most stressful 2 years of my life, because you're trying to learn everything yourself. But yeah, now I very much see the value in advisors, and very much see the value in having people around me. I mean, the more you learn, you don't know. And that's very much, MadeBrave's a small business. There's businesses of vast more size and experience than us. And I think what now, again, very early on, I seek to mentor. I was like, I need to find someone that's done this. And I hadn't, back then, Agencynomics and, these kind of support groups weren't here, which I get huge value from now. But, at the time, I didn't have anyone. And, I was seeking another agency owner. And I met one of the founders of one of the biggest agencies in Scotland very early on, I think in year 2. And, I seeked him out and sat, "Can I take you for lunch, please? I want to pick your brain." And I sat down and he asked me, like, "What have you done? What's MadeBrave doing?" And he said, "Andrew, you've done in 2 years what took me 9 years to do. You don't need me as a mentor." And at that point, I got an opposite of me, if you imagine, right? So I found someone that was an expert in finance, and that became my mentor, because so I've got a great guy that we catch up every so often, and his world is totally different to mine. But what's great about it is that, I can pick his brain and learn things that I'm not learning in what I'm doing day to day. But likewise, I can give him value back, so I can share things that he's not learning, so I can talk about brand, and and so there's a really good relationship. But nowadays at MadeBrave as well, we've obviously got Mark from Cactus on our board, and we're starting to build an advisory board, because I really do see the value in having different points of view and people that can challenge you and support you as well. So yeah, I suppose one thing I would do differently if I could is go back to early me and tell me to get bored as quickly as possible, because it's one of the best things.
I was wondering, was it something to do with the kind of MMA stuff, because of the fact that you have this background where you did competitive sports, and was it in competitive sports you always having, was it Tiger Woods has like 8 coaches or something, to improve his swing, or but you in sports you'd always give yourself surround yourself with advisors that can improve your form, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting for me in business how I just see the vast majority of people don't have people with them. But it seems like, and maybe for the early guys, you're right, maybe there is an element of cost to it. But it's certainly that saying, you don't know what you don't know. That's the thing I think I've learned the most. I mean, weirdly, I did the same as you. I went originally to my big competitor down the road. And he was always a little bit bigger than me. So I'd go back and say, right, what does 2 million look like? What does 3 million look like? And he would tell me, and he was right. Everything he said came true. So, but yeah, for me, it was the accountability of having a non-exec, for me a little bit, it just kept me on track.
I love your sports analogy there. When you mentioned I did MMA, and I'd never thought about it this way until you just said that. But when you're fighting professionally or in any sort of way, it's not you on your own that's fighting. You're in the ring, right? But you're listening hugely to the coaches behind you, and it's them that are guiding you, and it's them that have an outside perspective of what is happening. And I think, that's a really nice way to think about it, is that, it's very much a team sport, and that board, they're not in the day-to-day, and they're not blinded by the day-to-day stresses that you have. So they can often have a much better view of what's happening to you. And if they've been there before or had similar experiences, they can share those. So I think when you think about it that way, it's invaluable, isn't it? I
think, yeah. And it's also, I think, the acceptance that it's okay not to have to know everything, right? It's okay. Like you've said it yourself. It's okay to go and ask someone for a piece of advice. Or I always remember when I went to I did a talk in Edinburgh about feels like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was who's the guy? It was Ian McAteer. No, I'm trying to think that was who was the big agency that sold to. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it was, but yeah. I did a talk, and one of the agencies in the room was like at 5-6 million turnover, and All the rest were, let's say, somewhere between 500,000 and a couple of million. But the person who made the most notes, I always remember looking as I was talking, and it must have had 3 pages of A4 of everything I was saying, and came back and just said, everything you said we used to do, but we've just got along the way, we just got a bit lost. We just kind of started getting into bad habits and stopped doing it. It was like, this is gold dust. And it's so funny that actually I think you've got to want to learn. You've got to be, I think sometimes there's an imposter syndrome issue where you think you have to know everything, so you're prepared to sort of let down, and say, look, I'm happy to learn. But it's just an interesting observation with you, because I've always seen you with different people over the years. It's almost like sometimes I call it sort of like when you get to a black belt in karate, you go and do your dans, you get to different masters, don't you? And you have different techniques, different approaches. And I think that's a really smart thing to do. So what's next for the business now? I mean, actually, I in particular, I wanted to talk to you about, because going into lockdown, you had just invested in an amazing, incredible new office.
Great timing, huh?
And, your old office was just probably my most favorite office I've been into. Yours and one other, I've just one of my 2 favorite ever. And you moved this new amazing, and then obviously we all went to lockdown and remote working. Now I saw you had a lot of publicity about what you were doing moving forward. But could you share with us what your plans are now? How do you see the office of the future really as well playing a role in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always been a huge part of our culture. The living, breathing aspect of it that you mentioned is like, I really do believe the environment that you're in or that you work in has a big effect on how you how you behave and how you feel. And so, kind of early on, we always put a lot of effort into that. And at the start, kind of early on in my journey, I was lucky I went to San Francisco and got to visit the likes of Facebook, Twitter, Dropbox, and I saw how much further ahead they were in terms of just the kind of environment. And I suppose I brought some of that back to MadeBrave. Obviously we didn't see the COVID thing happening. We didn't see this, but we did. The lease that we signed was an 8-year lease for the new MadeBrave space. Now, we signed that last year, and we've got about 45 people, and the space, the way we have it configured, will hold about 50, 55, 60 perhaps, So we always knew we were going to grow beyond that studio. And we always knew that we were going to have some sort of hybrid approach where we have people located elsewhere. And so we were working towards that. And, I really do believe in the power of flexible working and being flexible around, people's lifestyles. However, COVID did what it did to everyone else, and it pushed us all 10 years ahead of where we are now. So I suppose very quickly we kind of sat down and thought, well, why don't we just lead the way here rather than waiting for everyone else? Because if you put out what you want to receive back, well, you'll attract the conversation, you'll take all the learning, and you'll be able to implement it. So we very quickly launched a work from anywhere policy before we have even written the policy. And that's the key part here, is that we created the vision of what we wanted to now create, or where we wanted to be as a business. Obviously, we've all been working remotely since March, and we're all still working remotely. But the idea being now is that, I kind of just want to have it be where you need to be and do what you need to do to run the business. And I like the flexibility since I've been a director of, I can work around family time and things that I like to do. And so my real thought is if I can get that to happen for our team, that's my goal, is if I can make the balance great for them, and we can run the business, and we can still be profitable and pay for everything, then that's the ultimate vision. And I got stressed a few months ago because we put this out and then we started to try and write down a policy. And it's very difficult because there's so many nuances and variables, and everyone's got a different opinion about it. But we started working with a company called Flexibility Works. Look them up. They're all about just trying to help create culture that's flexible. And they said to me, look, don't feel down on yourself because you've not got it down on paper. It's great that we have a vision. This is what we're working towards. And so we're now working as a team. We're now trying to figure out what this looks like, what ideal looks like. We've done a lot of kind of internal surveys, and I think the general approach we've seen is that people, they kind of want couple of days working from home, couple of days working from the studio or the office. But ultimately, as I say, I'm really trying to make it as flexible as possible. And I think, we're hiring 3 roles at the moment. And what we've seen, the difference in terms of, we've now got people from all over the world applying for roles. So it's really nice in terms of how diversely we build our team, how we can have people in different locations, which can obviously bring business opportunity that you won't get if you have your team in one location, because purely by osmosis, if you have someone, in a different city, you're going to get, you get business inquiries from that as well. So I can't see anything but benefits if we can iron out all the little variables.
I think it's interesting because again, it's that there's no right, no wrong. I think there's been a real momentum around sort of global, 100% agile distributed agencies with no offices, literally having flexible workplaces near their clients or near where people lived, so they can go to a working environment if they don't want to be at home. But the 3 agencies that I know that all have probably the highest let's say, and highest culture scores, where it's scored, like using Office Vibe, all of those people, the office is very at the heart of the culture. And actually, and although I think the number you quoted then was about right, it feels like about half the people want to go back on a regular and half don't, sort of thing. And the reality is that, and time will tell with that, but you're right, as long as you have a flexible first approach, and as long as people don't have to sit in traffic jams and commute anymore. I mean, I've kind of already got to a point now where even for me, I'm thinking, do I really want to go post all of this and sit in a car for 2 hours or fly? I just don't, I may as well just do it remote now, just because you lose so much time. So I think you're right. The world has moved forward quite quickly and quite well. And I think one of the other things is that I think a lot of people who set businesses up are often control freaks. They don't, there is a trust issue with their team. I don't think you're one of those people. I've not seen that, and I know I wasn't. But I think it's going to force to actually improve. I think a lot of business leaders who maybe have been mistrusting of employees before, or created workspaces around or work cultures around maybe and processes around the one in time it goes wrong, rather than kind of making it an environment that that sort of just trusts everyone to do a great job. And if they don't, well, you can deal with it. But I think your approach. So will you change? Will you redesign your office at all? Will it be?
I mean, we're kind of calling it like a brand home more. Is that it's a place that you kind of I think if you can make it an environment people want to be, then you kind of want. Yeah, we're social creatures. I like being around human beings as well. I don't want to sit in this. I kind of say I'm being like Father Jack sitting in this chair every day from Father Ted. You don't move off these chairs. I think we do need that interaction, and and a lot of great creativity comes from the energy that you pass between each other as well. So, our studio has always been an experience as well as a place of work, and there's a certain energy in that environment, as I mentioned earlier, and I think I was thinking about it recently. What if we didn't have an office at all? Would I feel fulfilled? And I think there's part of me that likes that. It's the kind of MadeBrave playground almost. It's a place that we can bring a lot of things to life. And there's something nice. And I think losing that, you could maybe lose the heart and soul of some businesses.
I think you've got it spot on. I think it's definitely going to be the situation that if you create almost a second home, if you create somewhere that people want to go and spend time, they can work, but they can socialize, they can interact. I think that will be the change. I think that everyone sees, and some people will want permanent desks in the office because they need to get out of the home.
And that's a thing you've got to remember as well, is that you sometimes when you're creating these things, you look in your own environment and you think, oh, it's nice working from home, but you've got to remember that everyone's at different life stages. And I think back when I was younger, and some of the flats I lived in, when I shared with multiple people, I couldn't have really focused or done any work at that time. And so sometimes for some people it's the breakaway, or sometimes they may be caring for people in the house, and so sometimes they need the breakaway. And I think as well as one thing that I've noticed is that you miss a lot of the learning that you get from overhearing conversations, and you also get to stop challenges or problems before they become challenges and problems, because you can see physically people or hear conversations. So yeah, I think there's still a place for it, and I don't think it's going away, but I think it will. We're not going to see everyone go back to normal, I think, but I think that's a good thing, because we're seeing that trust.
You're right on the diversity side of things as well, because I think it's been very hard for some agencies to create more diversity in their agencies, for many different reasons, but geography can play a major challenge on that. And it can, and I think actually you can attract much more, a better range of cultural diversity, from your business by being more global, being able to have people work from all around the world. And also, as you said, open up your opportunities. I think it's funny. I always say pre-COVID, I always thought the agencies in Scotland always seemed to be really good generally at distance selling. It's almost like
we've got to be good. There's not enough business in Scotland, unfortunately.
And I think the rest of the country will benefit, because in some ways you've always had to work that way. I mean, yeah, you probably jump on planes a lot, and but maybe there's been more video conversations before with clients. But I think I've already seen it now. I've definitely seen more international work coming in, and I think can only be a good thing for everyone, really. So
yeah, I think about 80% of our business is out with Scotland now. So
is it? Wow,
yeah, it's huge. I would need to run the numbers to see exactly, but my gut's telling me the majority is now no longer within.
Amazing. Yeah. So what's the plans for the future for you guys? Obviously, I'm going to imagine that we're all hoping that by next spring, most people will be coming back to some kind of normality. But where are your plans for the future? Is it just expanding more? Do you think having a more global team will be the next step?
Yeah. I think definitely that's definitely one of my focuses. I think like everyone, we felt the effects. March, June, July, and everyone went into panic mode, and no one knew what was happening. But I think, very much we've adapted to kind of, a lot of our business and stuff came from, we do a lot of talking, public talking kind of in person. So we very quickly had to shift that onto online. And as a team, we've been really focused on that, on kind of getting, making more of an effort, more noise online. And I think, because you've got to remember that this is all we've got now at the moment. We don't have, physical appearances. And so, I think moving into this year, we were kind of obviously, driving through the last few months, seeing what was happening and how everyone was adapting. But, we found a huge increase in, sales over the last few months. And, I'm feeling really confident now going into the beginning of the year. And yeah, definitely kind of focusing more on kind of growing more of that international business and kind of keeping that happening. So.
Yeah, I'm with you, by the way. I mean, I wrote a post a couple of days ago on LinkedIn about this. I think I've never in 20 years of going to agencies seen pipelines as big as I've seen them as an increase in the last quarter. And I think it's because, and yes, of course, there are some people that were massively affected by those sectors. I've said this a few times now, but on the whole, technology at the heart of marketing and advertising, and at the heart of sort of business transformation, especially accelerated by COVID, is just a growing area. And as such, if you're involved in any marketing or design or branding or advertising or digital development, whatever, technology is at the heart of your clients and also your own businesses. And so I think that's what's really driving things forward. I can't see next year being, I think there'll be a few areas hit next year, but I generally think it's a good time for agencies right now.
Yeah.
I think, we won't.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say, it's difficult because it's some have been really heavily affected. It's all down to kind of what industry you were in, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we at MadeBrave, we've always, brand is the thing that we focus on. So we've not niched on a sector. And I think, I've always kind of looked at myself and thought, Andrew, you should niche, because, sometimes people preach that niching's better because you get that kind of concentrated focus and you grow. But
you niche your services reasonably, don't you?
I mean, the service is niched around the core of brand. But I suppose industry-wise, I've always played away from that because, as you see, if you were niched around the wrong thing there, it could be disastrous.
Pharmaceuticals, which never seem to get affected by anything. Every other sector at some point gets hit. So I'm with you on. Always been a bit of a fan of not. If you do niche a sector, still have a wide enough reach around it that you can pivot if it does get into trouble. So I'm just getting a little sign from Caitlin there to give me notice. So listen, it's been great speaking to you. I feel like it's been. Oh, I got a little bleep coming then. That's funny. But it's always quite cathartic speaking to you because I can really relate. When I hear your story, it's actually, I think it's very, underlying. There's a lot of commonality there between a lot of people that I know, their stories, and it's great to spend some time with you. I love your whole approach to your brand, your personal brand. I think the way you've built the fame up for your business, you've done a great job on that. And I'm really fascinated to see how next year, what do you affectionately called, the MadeBravers? Is that what they're called?
Yes.
Your tribe. I'd love to see how that's going to work, in the new world order around, how will you actually do set days in the office, do you think? Or will you literally say, come in when you need to come in, or for clients, do you think?
I think it's just as and when you need. I think we'll do. I think
I'd love to see how that all what the footfall show looks like as they're doing retail. Find out exactly how many people come in and when and what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we've said, and I've said to our team, is look, let's try this. If we need to go back, if we need to revert, if we can't get it working, well, let's revert. But let's, if you don't try, you don't change and adapt. So I think it's just having the willingness to try. And I mean, I'm sure it'll be, it won't be pain free because you've got, I think it's. I was always kind of like, can you do flexible working as a service-based business? Because you feel like, we should have people there from 9 to 5. But I think, before COVID, when we introduced flexibility in terms of like starting anywhere between kind of, I think 8 and half 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning and finishing, whenever you wanted to a certain degree, it didn't change anything. It just gave people more benefit and, more control in their life. So I think this should feel uncomfortable just now because it's new to everyone. So, the more vocal we are and the more we all talk about it, the better we learn best practice, and eventually we'll figure out what this kind of new world order, as you put it there, I quite like that, looks like. Great.
Well, listen, thanks for your time. I know you're a big man. You've got lots going on at the moment, so I appreciate you sharing your story with everyone today. And that's it, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Keep liking and subscribing, please, on the YouTube channel, obviously on Spotify as well, on podcast and on iTunes. And till this afternoon, we've got another vodcast on this afternoon, 2 in one day. So if you want to tune in a bit later on, please do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Spence. Thanks, everyone.